Hey everyone, it's Aisha here, and this video is brought to you by Mavio. The topic that today we're going to cover is partner scoping and your secondary data discovery. We're going to see our DHS, our MICs, DHIS 2s. So before you collect your new data, we're going to see that who already has it. Okay, why not just collect new data? Why don't we just go on and collect new data? Why do we have the need to see that who already has it? So your primary data collection. Design a survey from scratch, don't do all of this. Train field enumerators, you travel to hundreds of villages, 18 plus months of field work, that costs a lot of money to you, and the quality depends upon your team. Why we could use secondary data? Why not just go on and just collect data on your own rather than just seeing who already has it and we can use it from there? We're just going to open up a laptop. We're going to access a repository for that specific kind of data. We're going to download nationally representative data. 50,000 plus households already surveyed about it. That is validated by 300 plus trained researchers, and that is totally cost free because you're just sitting at your home, you're opening your laptop, accessing a repository for that, and that is free for you after registration, and that data ready to analyze today. So the first question in health data science is never how do we collect this. Does it already exist, and who has it? That's the question that should come to your mind as a data scientist. What is secondary data? So the data that had been collected for a purpose other than your current research question, that is your secondary data. Primary data is that is growing your own vegetables. So secondary data is like going to the market. Someone already grew it. It's just you need to know which stall to visit and whether the vegetables are fresh and enough for your recipe or not. So types of secondary data in health, you have different types. Yeah, your household surveys, your routine health system data, your civil registrations, your administrative data, and your research repositories. For example, your DHS, your facility registers, your death vital statistics, your census data, WHO portals, and all that. What is your key points? Your secondary data is not a shortcut. It requires just as much critical thinking, just at a different stage of your work. You're just gonna spare some time, you're gonna spare yourself some money, and you're going to be good to go for that. What is partner scoping? So the systematic process of identifying your organization that collect, manage, or hold data relevant to your research question before designing your own data collection. That is your partner scoping. So think of it as a literature review, but instead of searching for published papers, you are searching for data holders who already holds that the kind of data you need for your research. So why it matters? This is going to avoid duplication of efforts. This is going to reveal your true data gaps. That what truly doesn't exist, open doors to data sharing agreements that maps the landscape of who is doing what exactly. And who could be a partner to you in this? Your Ministry of Health, your WHO, your World Bank, your academic institutions, your NGOs that running programs, and that kind of things could be your partners in this. How to do a partner scoping, a step-by-step approach. This is very easy. So you're going to define your question. You're going to be specific about it. For example, child malnutrition data is too large. And if stunting by wealth quintile in rural Sindh is searchable, you're going to map the ecosystem. WHO fund health programs here, like who funds your health programs here, who implements and monitors them. Each actor likely holds relevant data. So this is basically a WHO kind of thing, like who. Okay, so who is doing everything here? This is your mapping your ecosystem. Then you search known repository first. You check your DHS, MICs, WHO, GHO, your World Bank, and everything else that could possibly gives you the answers you need for your question. Then you reach out systematically. You contact your ministries, your UN offices, your NGOs. You ask them what data do you collect on this XYZ variable you need. Okay, is it accessible? And if it is accessible, then in what form? Then you have to document everything. You're gonna build a data inventory. You're gonna source coverage, yes, variables, availables, access conditions, and limitations. You're gonna just add it into that inventory. So a simple Excel data inventory is often the most valuable deliverable from scoping exercise. Then you have introducing the big three. Your DHS, your MICs, and your DHSR2. As per I said, we're going to learn this in this lecture. These are the three pillars of secondary health data in low and middle income countries. What is your DHS? Is basically your demographic and health surveys by USAID, ISF, your household surveys basically. Population level health and demographic data across 90 plus countries running since 1984. Your MICs, what are they? Your multiple indicator cluster surveys by UNICEF. Basically, your household surveys where you focused on women and children fills gaps where DHS is not available. 3 rounds completed. Your DHIS2, your district health information software, basically your routine facility data, real-time health facility data from 37 plus national health information systems is what is existing here. So your DHS and MICs, they are detailed door-to-door health census. But your DHIS2 is basically the hospital logbook updated daily, which is getting updated day by day. Then you have your DHS, your demographic and health surveys. What it measures: child and maternal mortality rates, your fertility and family plannings, since it's door to door kind of thing, your nutrition, is it stunting, wasting, anemic, or anything else, your HIV/AIDS knowledge and behavior as well, your vaccination coverage, your wealth, education, water, and sanitation as well. What are the key features we're taking? Frequencies like every 5 years per country, sample size like 5,000 to 30,000 households. Your disaggregation is like aggregation is basically region, rural, urban, wealth, quantile, everything else. Your access is free registration at this specific website. So what your limitation is: service happens every 5 years. So DHS is a photograph, not a video. That is not continuous. It has been taken every 5 years. Okay, so it cannot track monthly or annual changes. When Pakistan reports its national stunting rate to the UN, the source is the Pakistan's DHS. Okay, you have MICs, your multiple indicator cluster surveys. What are they measuring? They're measuring your child development and early learning, child labor, discipline, women's empowerment in marriage, water, sanitation and hygiene, birth registration, immunization and coverage. Its key features are basically it's covering the gaps where DHS is not available. Its compatibility is like identical questions all across the country. Timings are often conducted between DHS rounds and free registration at the specific websites. So your DHS versus your MICs, DHS has a deeper clinical measures and MICs is stronger on child rights. Okay, in many analyses, researchers use both and cross-check findings. For example, Afghanistan relies on MICs more than DHS due to the security and logistical constraints. Then we have DHIS2. What does your DHIS2 captures? It captures your facility service delivery, like visits, deliveries, vaccines, givens, and all that, your disease surveillance, weekly malaria, cholera outbreaks, and all that, your stock and supply data. This is basically covering day-to-day kind of data thing. Okay, your human resources and infrastructure data. What are its key features? It's continuous, it's monthly or weekly updates, it's covering every district and registered health facility. The dashboards of real-time data for health managers, and cost is like free upon and open sources. Countries have their own systems for this. So the limitation that your DHIS2 is capturing, it captures who come to the facility. Okay, it is capturing whatever is coming to the facility, not who stayed at home. Okay, so low numbers mean good health and or simply poor health care. The analogy that we're looking at here is DHIS2 is like a restaurant order book. It records who walked in, but nothing about the hungry people who are like on the street. Probably they cannot afford to eat that to come here. Then you have this table right here. It's just how to choose the right source for yourself. It's got all the key features that we discussed earlier. These systems are not complementary, not competing with each other at all. The best health analysis triangulate across all three. Okay, so common pitfalls when using secondary data. These are the kind of pitfalls you could probably fell for. Your ecological fallacy, your denominator problems, your missing data, your survey recall biases, and your outdated data. These are the examples here that we could look up to. You have rule of thumb. Always ask, why was this data collected, by whom, and with what kind of incentives are we talking about? We have data access, ethics, and agreements. Public repos for like your DHS and MICs are basically register and state your purpose. Free for research and education, cannot redistribute or sell this. Your individual microdata available for download. Then you have your government data, that is your DHIS2. This is aggregate data, often public. It is individual facility data needs formal request. You have work through the Ministry of the Health, and then you have national data custodian governance access. Partners data, the NGOs and the research. Okay, so it requires a data sharing agreement, your DSA. I think you guys probably know it by now, what DSAs are. Then you have what is shared, what is defined in that agreement, that what is shared, stored, and who accesses it. Okay, then specifies permitted uses for the data, sets publications and disseminations rules. Your ethical consideration is just because the data was collected on communities doesn't mean those communities consented to every future use of it. Okay, they always consider the original consent of the scope before consulting or conducting new analysis. You have a practical workflow. You clarify your question, you do the partner scoping, you pull out your DHIS2 or your DHS MICs, you contact your partners, and then you identify the gaps. So the scenario here was given was that the government asked why child vaccination rate lows in remote districts. First, we applied DHIS2 over it. Then we applied DHS and MICs over it. Then we saw how it's working. Just read this example by yourself and you'll be able to question the answers coming to your mind. Then we have the outcome is a structured data inventory plus the gap analysis. You may answer 80% of the questions without any new survey. Okay, your starting toolkit, your key data repositories, basically your DHS programs, your MICs, your WHO Global Health Observatory, your World Bank open data, and your IHME. Okay, so these are the country level resources that you're going to see. Ask before you collect your data. Know the big threes, your DHS, MCI, MICs, and your DHIS2. Okay, then you always triangulate, use all three. No single source tells the full story, so cross check findings across multiple data systems. Okay, then you understand the limitations, that every data set has biases. Knowing its weakness is as important as knowing as its strengths. All right, so then you're gonna data access has rules. You're going to register properly, you're going to respect the data sharing agreements as always, and consider ethics of use. The most underrated skill in health data science is not analysis, it's knowing what data exists and how to get that specific data. I hope this is clear to you guys by now. Just look out to these things and just remember the big threes as well. That's it for today's lecture. Thank you for watching.